This is Necrobuster. Napalm Death is it gets called a political band.
Salvation of what I see in others.
When you go camping, you get to see the Milky Way galaxy.
Punk rock type attitude too. We're just going to try to, gross you out with our music.
Yo, what's up? This is John from Noise Dosage Media, bringing you some of the most innovative and unique extreme metal musicians on air to have an in-depth conversation about things you probably didn't know until now. Before we unravel this episode, we want to bring attention to our driving force of visual creativity. Begrudgingly Benny creates one-of-a-kind creatures that you can't find anywhere else but below. His focus is on old-school style, slimy stippling that is budget-friendly for all bands or tattoo desired. Stay updated on the sludge by following at begrudgingly_Benny on Instagram. Withered Designs raises the dead with pen and ink and gives them new life with acidic color. Withered is eager to accompany your next album, merchandise, or zine with new, kick-ass, necromantic artwork. Keep up with the Horde by following him at Withered_Designs on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, and let's dive into this. We're going to start this podcast off by saying, holy crap, man. Adam, your band has grown so much, dude. Like, I remember seeing you guys with Carnifex. I think it was about 4 years ago. And, I didn't really know much about you guys, but like, I was just like blown away. I was like, what is this like deathcore thing? And like the blackened part. I mean, like I'm a guitar player and I was just kind of blown away on like your sweeping, really. But yeah. Do you remember anything from that tour?
So are you talking about the tour in 2017 where we were with Carnifex, Rings of Saturn, Fallujah?
Yeah, man, yeah.
We played I remember that tour because we were in upstate New York in like probably the worst time of year for like.
Was it winter?
It was. I think when we were in upstate New York, it didn't get past 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So it was literally we were playing like Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany. We played Vermont. I'm upstate New York, but we were just in this like cold pocket of America at that point in time, freezing. And I remember like it was, and I'm someone that like treks it out. And we don't really get many hotel rooms. We're just like, let's just stay in the van. Yeah, and like we started to stay in the van, and all of a sudden I was like, we are not going to survive. Like we probably will absolutely die in this thing. So I was like, we have to get a hotel like tomorrow because like the drive is short from like Syracuse to Buffalo, so we can just stay in a hotel room. Like it'll be fine. And yeah, it definitely was it definitely was very, very cold. But the venues were like super hot. So, I mean, it was just definitely a rough experience. I remember I was dreadfully sick in like Buffalo, like the sickest I can remember being. I couldn't even I could barely get on stage. And I remember just dying in the green room and like, somebody was playing this out-of-tune piano for like 5 hours and playing Mad World on repeat.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, I don't forget that. I remember just laying, like it was like a giant communal green room that we're all sharing. And I'm laying in the corner, just like have a jacket on, a hoodie on, beanie, everything. I'm just like, I am feeling like I'm dying. And I remember I couldn't even speak to be like, hey, stop, because I was just so sick that I was just kept hearing this really bad rendition of Mad World on the piano and also being sung. And I was like, this is probably what hell is like. And I'm definitely in it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you say like trekking through Buffalo during the winter. Because like there's a few bands from Texas I've been talking to, Sanguisuga Bog and Frozen Soul and all of them. Frozen Soul is from Texas and they're coming through during like the beginning of winter time and they've never been here. And I'm like, you guys are in for a treat, bro. Like, they've never seen snow like Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, I love like the cold anyway. Like I'm a winter person. I enjoy it. It just being out on the road in the winter is just there's so much hazardous stuff to deal with, like whether it be like just driving conditions and dealing with snow and stuff like that. And like, also just getting sick, because you're just more likely to get sick from on tour, just going from like winter regions. Then like a week later, you'll be in like Florida and just like, okay, I'm definitely getting sick, And then and you're constantly like changing of weather. So like that's the only reason why I don't really like touring in the winter, because you're just constantly going from different climates, and then like also just dealing with hazardous conditions.
Oh yeah, and thousands of dollars in gear in the back.
Yeah, it's just like so many things I like to not think about. But yeah, it's very like sketchy and scary when you think about it. But yeah, I do remember that tour. That was kind of crazy. We kept dodging like there was, I think it was a really bad blizzard in like the Northeast, and we just kept missing it. And I was like, thank God, because it's like I was like seeing like family at home, like and everyone just talking about how like bad it was, and I was like, oh my God, like we're literally going there. And like by the time we finally made it back to the Northeast, it was not nearly as bad. And I was like, thank God, because the idea of like dealing with that like on the road in the van is just the scariest thing. But I'm a big winter person anyway, so like leave me at home like in the winter. I love it.
Hell yeah. So off of, like the band and the new EP and just writing in general, like I know that you're basically you're like the dude for the band writing.
Yeah.
So from a writing like perspective, like where and how do you get the most creative for, writing an album? Like I've been told literally like people will like not listen to the music for a year and then get back to it. I've been told they lock themselves in a room and like throw candles on and crazy stuff. Like what do you do, man?
Yeah, I've tried all of like what you think you need to do creatively. Like I've tried the drugs, I've tried the sort of like isolation thing, I tried it all, and I think most of my writing is done in a very like not so sexy way. Sexy, I mean like it doesn't sound as cool to say it. It's very much a consistency thing, I think, for writing. And the big thing that I teach a lot of my students is like it's consistency over anything else. I think constantly writing has put me in a better state of creativity because you're just in that like mindset. I think the hardest part for me is going from like dead stop, not writing because you're, touring on an album you just did a year and a half ago, and then you're starting to write again. Like that becomes the challenge, is like kind of like getting the gears moving again. And then maintaining the gears to be moving by like consistently writing is when I feel like I come up with my best ideas. I mean, I've written one album, Flesh Coffin, at like 5 o'clock in the morning because I used to work a labor job. So I used to wake up first thing in the morning, write like for like an hour or so, hour and a half, however much time I had, and then just like go about my day and go to work. Because by the time I came home from work, or working outside, by the time I came home after working a 10-hour day, it's like I can't focus on guitar. Like my brain and my body is physically shot. So I was like, let me hack the system and just work on this before. And I wrote most of that record before going to work. So it's not like I had this it's not like I was like, oh, you know what? I summoned all these sort of entities with candles and whatever. I'm sitting here and like I'm sitting here in like basketball shorts, a t-shirt, a cup of coffee in a basement, working in the laptop, and then going to like walk to my labor job.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is like that's kind of unique, even though you say it might not be like the time of day. I mean, most of the time people work on it like, I don't know, noon when they get out of work, but like I feel like I have more energy like when I wake up, you know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, I definitely do because you wake up refreshed, So for me, what it was because like nobody was bothering me. No one's up at 5 o'clock and hitting my line. Like I had a girlfriend at that point in time. Like she wasn't awake, so she couldn't bother me. Nobody in my band was awake. My boss couldn't bother me. Management or anyone for the band, like the industry wise, couldn't bother me. So I was like, you know what? I can sit and focus because nobody is awake. And they do say like creativity. A lot of creative people work at the either earlier or the later side of the day because it's a big reason because no one else is awake. So a lot of people do a lot of people do work late at night because same situation, like at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, no one's really awake to bother you. Or other end of the spectrum, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, no one's really awake to bother you. And I hate to say it like bother you, but like it.
Oh yeah,
for me, my phone
is
constantly going off the hook, or and then like the beginning of the day, like none of the stuff that happens throughout the course of the day takes its toll on you yet because it's a brand new day. So like, you don't have to, it's not where it's like, oh, okay, I had a bad day at work because my boss was pissing me off. And now that puts me in a different headspace. or okay, I've had to deal with a bunch of band stuff, so like that took me out of the creative state. I had to go like put out some fires or whatever, or I had to switch gears and think about like Lorna Shore on tour and like getting ready for tour or getting ready for whatever, and I have that switches your perspective. Or like, okay, me and my girlfriend got in a fight during the day while I'm at work. It's like, okay, I can't really like, now I have to like put out that fire. So it would take me out of that headspace. Whereas in the first thing in the morning, like none of those things can take its toll on me. And again, I think your headspace and your mental whereabouts is going to affect the creative process. And like, I think people think because we write like angry, aggressive, heavy music that like being angry and aggressive is the best place to be. And it's just like, not really.
Not,
because, like,
it's far from it. Like,
no, for me, usually when I'm angry and I'm feeling like just like pent up energy, like I don't want to play guitar. I want to go to the gym and lift and like blow off some steam. Like for me, I need to be in a very calm state to like write music. And I don't care how heavy we write or how fast we write music or dark or whatever it is. Like being in that space does not allow me to write. Like, so yeah, I usually have to be in a very like comfortable environment.
what are you doing nowadays? Like, do you still, obviously with the band, your timing is different. Do you still try to wake up early and do it, or?
I try to just make sure it's a consistent thing. So recently my sleep schedule has been messed up because we played shows like 2 weeks ago, and like that threw off my entire sleep schedule.
Right.
So I've been trying to get back to like normalcy. So my thing recently has been trying to be as consistent and like write something every day. So today I wrote something. Yesterday I wrote something. So I try to like keep that habit of like, okay, let me sit down and write something and work on that. And like, I obviously teach students in between that. So like, I'll try to like, okay, let me work on this stuff before I teach a student, because like, I'd rather do this stuff now and then not, because again, after teaching guitar, sometimes I don't really want to play guitar. So I was like, let me just get this stuff figured out. So I try to set time throughout the course of the day of like getting stuff done. And it's usually like, I don't really deal with any sort of anything until noon. So like, I don't start teaching as early until noon. I don't start doing any sort of band stuff. I don't answer the phone for the band until afternoon. So like, I try to like wake up, and however early I can wake up, like I try to wake up and go about having at least the morning to myself. And then usually that entails more recently writing the record, because I'm giving at least time to myself to focus on this stuff, because I am a big proponent of consistency. I think that seems to work the best for me, is just being consistent and like doing stuff every day. And I think that's basically how this EP was written. It was just a consistency thing. It wasn't some sort of like, I mean, towards the end of getting ready to go to the studio was like locking yourself in a room and just working on it every day. But like, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like you're in that creative flow state. So like, you'll just forget that like hours have gone by and you've been sitting in this room, like working on these parts. So it's not like, I have to lock this door and like people have to nail it shut and don't let me out. It's just more so as you're in this consistent thing,
it's more natural.
Exactly. It's not like when I try forcing myself, like, okay, I'm going to sit down and lock myself in the room and work on this for 4 hours. Like, it works against me. But if I just go, I'm going to sit down and write something, however long it takes. And, if I finish something, I finish something, and then after doing that over and over and again, like time goes on.
You already have a record. It's funny you say that, because like I switched my writing habits as of like a year, like the beginning of the pandemic. I had like a huge writer's block, year and a half. And I started doing what you kind of said, just kind of write a riff, record it, and just forget about it, really. And dude, I have like 350 riffs like just recorded, and I couldn't write shit a year and a half ago. Like I was just blanking, So
same. I mean, even this EP was me blanking. Like literally, like, I hate to say it, but like we got home from tour, or we got like, tour got canceled and we had to go home. And I was like, okay, well, now's the time to write music. And like, I couldn't write anything. I wrote stuff, like a lot of stuff that I did write, it made the EP. But like in that moment, I didn't think these were good ideas, because like I was in a poor headspace. And I think that I powered through that by just like documenting everything I write. Like every single thing you write doesn't need to be the best idea in the world. I think just by
throw it in.
By sitting down writing something, like it's just good to either maintain the habit, like it's the same thing with, I see that with like going to the gym. It's like there's some days I don't want to go to the gym, And I get myself in the car, I drive, I work out, and maybe I don't feel any better or feel any different, but at least I'm like, I maintain the habit, and it'll make it easier for me to continue this thing tomorrow when I might have the energy to do it. So for me, that's something that like I was kind of doing during last year was just writing every day and like documenting everything. I was also putting like hard limits on like time limits. Like, okay, you have 15 minutes to write a riff, whether it's good or bad. It just finished a riff in 15 minutes. Because I see so many people, and I talk to so many students. They're like, oh yeah, I've been spending 3 months writing this one song. I'm like, that is too much time. Like 3 months is way too much time.
Way too much.
Way too much time. I was like, you've just spinning your gears for no reason. Like you can write a song in one day. I promise you. If you tell yourself you can write a song in one day, you will write a song in one day. I guarantee you.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was perfect, man. Like perfectly in depth. I can't wait to have like friends listen to that portion. So the next part that I have, so what excites you about like the evolution of this genre as a whole? And I'm not just talking about like, black and deathcore or whatever. I'm talking about just extreme music in general. What excites you about the evolution of this? Like I've seen some huge numbers within the last couple of years with bands. Bands that I like, like the genre I always thought was just kind of like gonna like fade, but it's like gaining a lot of attraction.
It's just interesting to me that like nowadays people in our position or in any band is like putting up really good numbers, because that just shows that the audience is there. So for me, I'm very grateful that the audience is there, because without the audience, like we don't exist. But I think the audience exists as bands write better albums. So I feel like it's a weird never-ending, it's like a weird revolving or continuous cycle that like bands write good records, people respond to them, and then it creates the community. The community is more susceptible to more bands like that, and then kind of gets more bands to write better music. I don't know. It feels like this weird continuation and this kind of like spiral, like endless loop. So for me, I'm like grateful that there is a community. I'm grateful that there are people responding to our music. I also think it's great that not just our music, I guess our music in the sense of like extreme metal. I also think it's great that there's all these awesome bands existing, because that's the reason why these things are happening, because bands are putting out good records. And to me, it's exciting, because it's like that just feeds me, because it's like, oh, it's a good energy to be in. It's a good pocket to be in, because then I get inspired by stuff, or there's, I don't know, there's just a lot more to pick and choose from it, and it just feels exciting, to say the least. But yeah, it's great, because I just always like think, man, hopefully this thing doesn't die down, and then like next minute, no, we put out a record or an EP, and it's just like doing fantastic number wise. But at the end of the day, I think numbers are just feedback. I don't really like drive my entire reason for doing this based off of like numbers. Like the numbers are just a quantifiable measure of something. It doesn't equate to like why I sit down and play guitar. Like I don't sit down when I'm writing a song or playing guitar being like, okay, I hope we hit this number. Like none of us could have foreseen that. It was more so just like, we love doing this, so we're going to sit down and write. And if people respond to it, that's great. But like, this is kind of what I want to do anyway. But I am glad that the extreme metal or like metal community is kind of showing up in full force these days and like consuming music, because that's like super important. And I don't know if it was because of last year, everyone didn't have that like luxury of like music, so people are just consuming music that much more to fill that void.
Yeah, I don't know what I was curious about that too.
I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because like, okay, we've, I will say that we as Americans become very ungrateful for like live music, because we have it so much. But when you go to places that don't have live music as often, like they show up in full force, because like they don't know when they're getting music again. They don't know when they're getting another live show, or we're going to go see your band again. So for me, I feel like people, and again, I understand the idea of saturating a market and everything else like that. So I feel like, I don't know if it's because we couldn't be on tour and play music that people are just, filling that void by listening to all bands as often as they do. I truly don't know, but I'm just glad at the end of the day, like whatever it may be, the powers that be, whatever spiritual thing that is causing this thing to exist, like I'm excited about it. I'm excited that this thing happens, and I'm glad that people are consuming music. I don't know what the formula is, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to ride the ride and and just glad that there is a community of people listening to music. I'm glad that there's bands putting out great records, and I'm just excited that there is a market right now. And at the end of the day, even as I said before, like, it doesn't really matter if there is a market or not. We're still going to write the music we're going to write. It's just like, it's cool that there is that, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it gives you the opportunity to like fucking tour the world, man. Like, I mean, you've been all like around, man. And I say this all the time. I mean, like, I play music. I'm not a professional musician at all. The only thing I do is talk to people. And I think one of the coolest things that people don't really mention much is like the amount of, experience, or like just in general, like been around the world, man. Not a lot of people do that, you know, like literally just go around the fucking globe.
Yeah, I'm definitely very grateful that our music has taken us places and allows us to go to different pockets of the world where people don't even know you, but like know your band. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, these are places that people will take off from work for 2 weeks to go here.
Exactly, man.
And I'm getting flown out to go play music that I wrote in my underwear. So like, so like, you know what I'm saying? Like, for me, I'm just like, this is awesome, and I'm very grateful for it. And I never forget that. I never ever forget that. The first time I went to Europe was a very like profound experience. Like, day one, we were on a bus with a bunch of other bands, and I looked across at Austin, and we're like going down the Autobahn, going probably about 4,000 miles an hour in this bus. And I was like, you know what's crazy? Like, we wrote this music sitting in my parents' basement, and now we are literally on a bus playing Europe.
Yeah,
and like,
yeah, that's crazy, man.
It's a crazy thing to think about. It's just like, I remember sitting in my parents' basement writing this record, and now here we are, like a year and a half later, sitting on a bus in Germany, where this guy's going about 100 miles over the speed limit in a bus full of like 30 people. And I was like, the idea that we're just doing this, and like, I have a beer in my hand while we're driving in a bus. Like, this is crazy to me. Like, this is not real life. But like, I still never forgot that. I still always like took that like in, and like just like sat with it. And I still think that even as a band, like touring America, where you've been to these cities 1,000 times, it's just like, you know, a lot of us as musicians, like, I can't speak for everyone, but for me and for a lot of people I do speak to, like, you're kind of a nobody when you're growing up. You know, you're not someone that like people care about. You find your way into music because like you were an outcast, like you didn't belong in like whatever social pocket. So you find something that like accepts you, and you started off being like a nobody person from nowhere. And then people like outside of like, you know, or in a certain world, like see you as a different person. It's like, that's so crazy, because like when I go home and I go to the grocery store, nobody knows who the fuck I am. You know, I go and
then you show up to a show, they're like, yo, that's that fucking dude that wrote that banger album, man.
Exactly. So it's a completely different situation. So it's such a crazy like shock, because like you'll just go home, do a normal thing on a Tuesday. Like, I guarantee today I'm gonna go maybe get food somewhere, and no one's gonna recognize who the hell I am. But if I go get food next to a venue or playing, people know who you are. You know, and it's just kind of crazy thing, and it's a crazy thing to think about, because like we went, as you know, for me as a teenager, like going under the radar, no one knows who you are, like you don't really fit in. It's just like then being seen by like people that like all over the place. It is a very crazy experience, and just to think that just something you did sitting down that you willing to do every day got you to this point. You know, I never forget that.
Yeah. So other than like you said, Germany, Europe, what else has been like some crazy places? You know, I've been told like Japan's pretty wild. Mexico is pretty wild.
Yeah, so those are places we've never been to. We were supposed to go to Japan in 2020, didn't. We were supposed to have like a big extensive tour, like traveling like across the world in 2020, and obviously that fell apart. So like those are places that I'm really looking forward to going to, is like a place like Japan. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I think just for me, what's crazy is the fact that I get to do that. It's like, that to me is like, it's still like beyond me, but I haven't really been anywhere where it's been like, holy crap, you know, like, you know, I've been, I think in parts of like Eastern Europe, it was very holy crap, because it's like, you know, some impoverished areas are very just like war torn and stuff like that. And like that kind of like, you look at stuff in a different light, you're like, damn, you can see like the effect of a war that happened a long time ago and still like reminiscent here. And it's like, this is kind of crazy, you know. And it was like seeing things that was like, okay, this is different, you know, because when you go to like some more developed countries like in Europe, like England or like Germany or France, some of these bigger countries, it doesn't really have that feeling. It just feels like older America, basically. It's a joke that I have. But then when I went to a place like Czech Republic or Hungary or Poland, you're seeing things a little differently, and I'm like, oh, okay. There's like still residue effects from like a war that like literally just like tore its way through here. And maybe that's just me looking at it through that lens, but I still felt the essence of it, and I was like, this is kind of wild. And I guess my heart still goes out to people that are like dealing with that stuff and having the after effects of it or whatever it may be. But maybe we're just in impoverished areas, so like, and that happened and that exists everywhere. But it was just like, I don't know. It was definitely a crazy thing to see.
Yeah, if you were hanging out on your mom's couch in the basement that day, you wouldn't see that shit,
No, exactly. If I was just doing my everyday thing of just like whatever it is I was doing, working my job or going to get food or meeting up with someone, like I wouldn't think that. You're just going to the same places that you end up going to. It's just definitely a crazy thing to think about. It's but yeah, we haven't really gone anywhere that's like been a culture shock. Like I think Asia to me seems like a culture shock because it feels like it's so different than like I'd say Europe and America is from my understanding. I don't really know, so I'm really excited to go there because I feel like it's just such a different. It seems to be from a different experience, but I mean, I definitely want to.
I was just told they're much they're just a more crazier crowd. Like they're just a lot more hyped up.
Well, that kind of goes along what I was saying before, is that like because the crowds that we got in Eastern Europe was very similar to what people were saying about crowds in like South America or like other places, because tours don't really go there that often. So when people come out, it's like this is my one chance to kind of go nuts. Like that's the only thing I'm thinking of.
We gotta make a point for them to come back.
Right. It's like and people are thinking about this like for weeks, because it's like this is the only thing I have to look forward to. And I was hearing that about the same thing about like going into like South America or like Mexico or other places where like you're not really likely to go. It's like people are just like waiting for you to get there because like this is the thing that they like. It's very rare that like touring bands come there. So, but when you think about country like America or like Germany or England or stuff like that, where touring is so often, like you become a little bit more jaded to it because like, oh, okay, any of these bands come here all the time. But like I remember like they were like someone told me like, oh, when you go to like parts of Eastern Europe, like people were going to be nuts. And like they were nuts, and I loved it. I was like, this is honestly what I love, because it's just like it is so nuts, and like the reaction is so like energetic because you don't really get stuff like that. It just, to me, it's really really awesome. So I mean that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, is to see the culture, but as well as just like the again, as I keep saying, the most profound thing is that like there are people out there who don't know me as a person, who maybe some people can't even speak. We don't even speak the same language, but resonate with our music, and we've never spoken a word to each other. To me, is like such a crazy thing to wrap my head around. Is that like we could not even speak to each other, like we couldn't even have a conversation, but like you resonate with like my personal experience.
Yeah, like they can't. Yeah, and on top of that, they can't decipher like the lyrics when they listen to it. You know what I mean? But they still appreciate it. Which is awesome.
So I mean, again, it's like not saying that people don't speak our language. I mean, obviously, there is people that I will have conversations with people on the internet that are from different parts of the world, and we have conversations. But I know there definitely is people that are out there that we couldn't have a conversation, but yet they like are impacted by our music, which is like all of us putting our personalities and experiences into our music, and for some reason to have that reaction is just such a crazy thing to think about, in my opinion. So
it makes you wake up every day and say, "This is what I'm doing."
Exactly, totally. It's just like how can you not be like wired to go continue to do this? Is that like there's someone out there you can connect with that doesn't even know who the hell you are, and doesn't even know like anything about you, or could connect with you, but like for some reason with this one little thing you have this mutual connection to them, and like it's just an awesome thing to share with a whole crowd of people, and it's something that like I get, again, like I take that perspective in all times, just because the fact that with traveling you kind of do see things a little differently.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you for the last one here. I noticed that you were like a fan of Full of Hell. I saw you wearing like a t-shirt and stuff, and I'm curious what attracts you the most about them. I just talked to them like literally like 2 episodes ago. So that was cool. So yeah, like what attracts you the most about them? And are there any other bands that you've been impressed with lately?
So they're a bit. I think what I think variety is the spice of life, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that I get excited about things that kind of take me out of my box, and it's such like a different box to be in. So you're like more enamored by this, and I think Full of Hell to me is just this raw, aggressive, like chaotic thing, right? You know, it's just very like in your face, nonstop, like really raw. It has a lot of like energy and aggression, and like granted, our band has not similar things, but we have different approaches to it. But
Yeah,
to me, like
yeah.
how it's done so raw, the songs are like short or just like really chaotic. I'm like, this is just nuts to hear. So it's just like it takes a break out of like the stuff that I listen to.
Mhm.
And like my closest friend Dan, he turned me on to them because he was like always listening to stuff like that, and I was like, he would always listen to like a lot more like hardcore based stuff, but like some of the stuff I don't really get. But like when you play stuff like Full of Hell, I was like, oh, this is actually sick. This is like really like energetic and like
Yeah.
chaotic, and like it kind of it's like really fast, and like I enjoy it. I just think it's just maybe because of the variation and variety of like what I'm listening to and like what I normally write. It just kind of like gives me a whirlwind. It kind of like puts me in a whole new box to like think about and like see things differently. So it's just cool. It's just like it adds more variation. It's also like less centered around like all this crazy production stuff and all these like, you know, 150 tracks of music that like Lorna Shore would have. So it's just cool to be like this raw, like
Yeah,
aggressive, like in your face thing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so like
it's
hectic
so
and chaotic that
yeah, sometimes it's
it,
like bare. It depends on because some of their music is bare bones and then some of it isn't, you know.
right. So, you know, they do other things as well, but like at its core, it's just this really like raw, like aggressive thing that like something that we probably would never do. But I try to adopt it in our own way of like, how can we bring that vibe to it? But like, you know, not saying we have Full of Hell parts. I'm not trying to say that at all before someone tries coming down my neck being like, but no, but like, I like, there's essences about it that I really like because it's something that our band doesn't do. And it's the same thing that goes for like, I listen to a lot of like underground, like German techno and stuff like that. It's a similar thing
Nice.
because it's a completely like different approach to music that like is so different in the world that I'm in. So it's just like I like the variation of just being able to listen to all different styles of music and finding enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and it just kind of again, it just changes you from like what you're used to with what you listen to, and it's like that methodology and that of application doesn't work in these other genres, and because it doesn't work, you have this new application, and it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like this approach is like this sort of way, and it's just nice to kind of have that. So for me,
Yeah.
I get bored easily, and I'm a big believer in variety is the spice of life. So like having other genres of music or other styles within like other subsets within your genre is really cool for me to listen to. But yeah, I just like the hectic chaoticness of it. I can't listen to it at all times, but there's definitely moments where I'm like, you have like a moment you're like, you know, I'm gonna put this on. It's kind of like speaking to me right now. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Gets you all fired up, man.
yeah, for sure. And I do enjoy listening to stuff like that from time to time. And I know they have a new record coming out
Oh
soonish.
man, I
Yeah,
can't wait. I literally can't
exactly.
wait. So the second part of that question I've been adopting recently is there any bands that you've been impressed with lately? And I'm talking it could be anywhere in between like genres, local, national, whatever.
Oh man, I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for this, but um, it's kind of hard nowadays because you would think during last year there's going to be an influx of so much music, and maybe it's starting to come out now, but
Hmm.
I think a band that I absolutely love, and have been impressed with for years, but like they always seem to impress me is a band called Rivers of Nile. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
they're a
they're
band I
awesome.
think that they are literally I think a phenomenal band. I think they're someone that pushes the boundaries, and I think that when I think that I'm like, okay, what they do is awesome, and I'm like, if they can just keep doing this thing that's awesome, like that'd be great. And then like they put out more material, and it's like, okay, that's even more awesome than the last material. And then they put out like more material. I'm like, okay, it's even more last. It's awesome, like compared to the last material. So just like that band, I'm so impressed by because I feel like they're so bold, and I love the idea of someone being bold and kind of just like pushing the box outwards and like, okay, we can abandon, not abandon, but we can take things to its new level and just taking a chance on things and trying things out, or like, kind of escaping this kind of guise that you're looked in. And maybe that's not what they're looking, maybe that's not how they see themselves. That's kind of how I see it. And it's just a band I'm super impressed by and just like inspired by, because I just feel like they take a lot of chances and do a lot of things that are very outside of the box. And I think myself and Austin, actually pretty much myself and everyone in the band, calls them like the Pink Floyd of death metal, just because like they're just so like beyond them, like beyond the world of that. And I think it's just so awesome. I'm very excited for their new record. We also, as a band, we love them as people. So just awesome when you meet people that you get along with really, really well.
And they're modest too.
Yeah. And then they put out a record that like is just, they put out music that is phenomenal. I'm like, geez, how do you guys do this? Like, this is crazy, But that's a band I've always been very impressed by. It's a band that I absolutely love. And I've been listening to them forever. And, but they don't cease to like amaze me. Like, if that's the right language for it, but they're a band that I absolutely love. And I'm very impressed by. And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for the new record to come out, just so I can rip it off, or try to, as I always try to do. I wear my influence on my sleeve, and I let everyone know. I'm like, yo, by the way, like, I totally got this from you. And people are like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, I literally stole this from you. And like, if you're cool with like not recognizing it, I'm going to continue to do it. But like, just so you know, heads up, I got this from you.
Yeah, you gotta. Oh, it doesn't matter if you're fucking AC/DC or Metallica. You had some type of influence anywhere,
Oh, I guess another band I'm really impressed by, because they finally flew on my radar, is the band Turnstile. They just put out a new record, and I never really was a fan of that band, or maybe I could have been. I just never really it's not a world that I'm really familiar with. But I've been listening to the last record, and it's really sick. I actually find myself listening to it a lot, and I'm just like, this is so awesome, and I like enjoy listening to it so much, because again, it's just done so well. So that's another record I've been really finding myself listening to it a lot, is the new Turnstile record.
Right on. All right, well, we'll wrap it up with basically what you want to promote. I'll just open up the table for you to just whatever you got coming, or what has come.
So I just want to say, for everyone who has been listening to the new EP and I Return to Nothingness, thank you for listening to it as often as you have. Continue listening to it. Put it on a repeat while you sleep. Don't stop listening to it. Run that thing into the ground. Break Spotify's algorithm. Listen to it as much as you do. Anyone that came out to these past shows that we did a couple weeks ago, like, thank you for coming out, because those are like some of the most like special shows we've ever played. And for the future, really looking forward to this tour we have coming up with Enterprise Earth, Sentinels, and Crowd Magnetar. So we're going to be playing our EP to places that we haven't been to in a while. So I'm excited to go back out on the road and kind of travel the US and play some shows. And that's really it. Like, listen to the EP. If you can come out and see us, cool. If you can't come out and see us, again, listen to the EP. And at some point, maybe we'll make our way to you. And just keep doing whatever you're doing. And I thank everyone for checking us out.
Hell yeah. That was a perfect wrap up. I've heard some funny ones. They're like, yep, I don't know what to say for this part.
I don't either.
Well, no. Sometimes it's come to a point where they're like, we got some shirts, but they're all sold out.